which was formed in 1835 by private special law of the state of Maine, by the legislature, and it was formed by 63 companies. Because up until then, there's all these producers of wood and all these users of wood, producers of wood up in the drainage. They had all these companies, sawmills at that time, down through here and all the way down through to Augusta, and lower, Gardner, I suppose, all the way out to Tidewater, that used wood, saw logs. 4-foot pulp didn't really start to be a part of the enterprise until probably around 1900 or so, when that fellow's great-grandfather, great-great-uncle, BPJ Western built the forerunner of this paper mill. Until then, they were making paper mostly out of rags. So you can imagine, and this right here that they're standing on was an island in the Kennebec. So in any event, so some of these piers that we look at out here are going to date from as early as 1835 or thereabouts, or possibly even earlier than that, given that the creation of the KLD didn't come into being until they saw the need for it. That may have been after they'd already been, they've been driving wood here for centuries, many centuries. So I think what I'd like to do is see if we're going to have to be a little bit careful. I'm going to propose that we go out onto the pedestrian side of the bridge. Dave here worked for the KLD up until the last drive in 1976. I was working up on the lake in summers during college for Scott Paper. Scott Paper would bring the wood down as far as Indian Pond, and then the KLD took it over and took it all the way back down to Winslow. Did you handle wood for Statler Tissue?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, because Statler Tissue was involved until, I don't know whether it was the actual end or maybe like just a couple years before the end.
Yeah, actually it was Hudson Paper.
Hudson Paper.
At that time.
Yeah. So, any questions? Seeing none, I think we ought to proceed accordingly.
I just might mention, Merrimack Bay had a lot of sawmills.
Yeah, that's true.
In the, about through the 1800s, and all that wood came down Kennebec River, and they were filling up Merrimack Bay with sawdust.
Yeah.
Essentially, tremendous environmental impacts of sawdust being dumped into Merrimack sawmills. They would just line the place, and then they'd load it on ships and haul it to New York or Brazil or London or wherever it was going.
Paul's father, Glenn Frederick, was a producer of wood, and made use of a lot of the small driving dams on some of these smaller streams around this part of the Kennebec area. And he has a log stamp.
I have my dad's log stamp. He drove almost exclusively on the Sandy River and its tributaries, which comes in, those who aren't familiar, about a mile and a half downstream from where we're standing. And he would have operated in the 20s and 30s. I think the last log drive on Sandy River was 1936, and he was involved with that. And there's no pilings or piers as we see here on Sandy River. There are on the Carabasset, which is about the same size as the Sandy. And the Sandy presented a kind of a unique set of problems because it has fairly low banks and broad intervales on both sides. And it frequently flooded. Of course, you wanted water high freshet level to drive. And he drove only 4-foot pulp. And you wanted freshet level water, but you didn't want it too high because then the water would spread all over these intervals, and the pulpwood would spread over the intervals, and two things would go haywire then.
Want to take your mask off here?
You I'll show some distance a little bit here. You had to put your driving crew out to retrieve the pulpwood all over all these farm intervals, which was a very labor-intensive project. And secondly, a lot of the wood would disappear because of wood theft. The local farmers would claim that wood, why we had the stamp on the end of the wood, but they could take their saw, cut off quarter or half inch of wood on the end, and claim the wood as their own, because there's no other way of identifying who belonged to what wood, what wood belonged to who. And as I understand it, the Hiltons and Grays were particularly inclined to swipe wood, this 4-foot wood that floated up on the banks of their property just downstream from where we're standing. And the log driving interests eventually purchased the river frontage on those two farms so that they wouldn't be losing as much pulpwood. So there's a lot of local tradition and impact here about how these small driving operations kind of fit into the larger picture. And not the only thing I have left from my heritage is this stamp. But my father did have a bateau that he used. We have some photographs scattered around of log jams on the Sandy River. And the boat would be out there, the water would be high, and they'd get them unraveled. And much of his wood, I know, went to Augusta. And some of it may have gone to Winslow. But all this happened before I showed up to help out. And his crew would number about 4 or 5 or 6 during driving season. I might add, I don't know how long our time frame is. Well, I used to be a college professor. All my sound bites are either 50 minutes or an hour and 15 minutes. And I don't know, we're at a 50-minute sound bite right now, I think. But Vernie told me to keep it short. One of the things that I'd like to mention, my father got into this in the 20s, or actually in the late teens. He was born in '03, and like most teenagers, how are you going to make a penny spend on your girlfriend or your fishing gear or whatever was in the go? And there were some folks cutting pulpwood on these little tiny tributaries up through Industry and Stacks and so on, and they were wondering how they were going to get their crews out to throw this 4-foot pulpwood into the streams during freshet season, or if there was a rainfall and the water came up a little bit. How are you going to get that in the water while the water is still high enough to float it down to the Sandy River and then into the Kennebec? And my father figured out that if he could recruit some of his buddies from around Starks Village to keep an eye on the weather, and when they get a big rainstorm, they'd rush out to wherever this wood was piled up next to these little tributaries and throw it in the brooks. And it would have ability to be floated into Sandy River. So my father started putting a crew together when he was probably about 17 or 18 years old. And by the time he was in his 20s, he was running his own driving operations and had acquired a fair amount of stumpage, and in some cases actual woodlots up here, particularly in the New Vineyard Mountains. So that's how he got into it. It kind of was a way of making a little money, and he would organize a bunch of teenage boys to go out and throw this wood in the brooks. And in some cases there were driving dams, as we know we have one out in Starks where the water would be impounded, and then the impound would be filled up with floating wood, and then they pull some key logs on the impoundment, and they would all sweep down through the waterway into the Sandy. His small streams would have been too small to drive logs on. This would have been strictly a 4-foot pulp operation, which, as Ernie said, did not really gain much traction until the very late 18 or early 1900s with the pulp mill.
Log stamp was that, like I said, there was dozens of producers of wood, and different producers contracted to sell their wood to different mills downstream, and so they had to stamp their logs, and then they had a whole series of sorting processes all up and down the river here. One of the major sorting booms was right upriver here to try to keep the wood that was going from a producer to a user, to keep them all separate. And of course there's a whole bunch of prospects for losing track of their wood. The KLD was formed as a non-profit operation by these 63 producers, and all those producers kind of came and went. You know, as they came into business, went out of business. And at the end of the year, they would tally up how much all the expenses were, the KLD, and then they would divvy it up among the users, the owners of the KLD, in accordance with how much wood they'd actually had. So, I think we may be at a point where we want to try to head out on the bridge. Okay.
So Ernie, I just kind of scoped it out. We can see pretty well from the sidewalk.
Yeah, we could try that.
I think that might be safer than to
Okay.
this many people.
This gate was right there.
You can see the asphalt on the other side.
Yeah. So, Dave, was this crib all the way up? Was this part of the structure that you were dealing with, or was this kind of wood just kind of floating
do you
in
mind
here?
if I stay in here so I can
I'm
video
trying to
them?
remember. Yeah, that was. Our booms ran down along on the outside of those piers. That picture I showed it pretty good. Our shut-off was right over there on that second pier up, and it would come down.
So when you say a shut off, what do you mean by a shut off?
Well, in
None
order
of
to
these people back here can hear
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
yeah, it's in a very good spot.
Maybe if some more of you come up around
Come
here.
closer. And we can spread out.
Be like
this way.
cattle and goats and make the cars
And then
stop.
just really protect.
Our booms, but they didn't want the wood getting down into the power station. So there was this, booms were these, they were spruce logs about 25 feet long, and they were all chained together, and they ran along these piers to keep the wood on this side so that it didn't get down into the station. And that pier that you can see up there was,
Just beyond the trestle?
yeah, well, no, this side of it, this first one,
Yeah.
that's where our shut-off was. We had a winch on there, a hand winch,
Yeah.
and it would, in order to stop the flow of wood, like, for whatever reason, if they didn't need it at that time, so we'd crank that old hand winch and pull a boom across to stop the wood.
And then was that taking place like on a daily basis, a weekly basis? or-
Yeah, a lot of times we would only sluice during the day, and so at night, I sluiced here quite a bit at night. Sometimes it depended on when they needed the wood and how much wood they needed.
And this is being needed here or downriver?
Downriver, nothing was coming to Madison. All those piers over there, we didn't have anything to do with them. They were
Pre-existing.
there for when they were taking wood at this mill. All this wood, when I worked here in the 60s and 70s, everything was going downriver.
Yeah.
This mill didn't take any wood. It was all going to Winslow or Augusta. But the only piers we really utilized were these right here and this row here, down to this gate.
So
One person sluiced here.
and when you say you sluiced, what does that mean? What were you doing?
Well, the gate was right here, and
So they would open up that, you'd let that winch go.
And the mill, there was an electric motor on out here.
Yeah.
The mill would pull it up and down. It was electrically
Oh,
operated.
for the gate itself.
But the gate itself was electrically operated from the mill. So, but in the fall of the year, when they called it taking the rear, that's when all the wood had to be cleaned up and brought down. And that photograph that I passed around, the gate was down here behind this pier, but the wood would jam in against the boom, so we'd have to go out there and stand on it like that and get it back out into the current. That's me, and this is 1976, the last year of the drive.
Are you starting them too based on those?
No.
Not
It
at that
was
time.
all just going down.
That was
That was
And
what-
so
that was
we would have a good sized crew on the rear. There would be like 30 or 40 people. Usually when you're out on the river, there would be like 10 or 12 on each side, throwing the wood in. There'd be a boat. We'd have a boat with a shot boom in dead water to collect the wood and make sure, if it was in dead water, there was no current. You have to pull it down.
Now you put booms across a lot of your coves to keep the wood out of there, and you
Yeah.
put. And
Yeah.
were you guys? Were they feeding you during the day?
Oh yeah, they would bring us a meal at noontime.
Yeah.
Up at the North Anson it was the Great Northern Farm at that time.
That's that big barn there on Madison
Yeah,
Street.
Yeah, they'd cook it up there, and they'd haul it. It depended on where we were on the river. We had camps all up and down the river. Up in
There's a boom house there on the River Road in Madison.
yeah,
There's another one down here at the Eddy in Skowhegan, wasn't there?
yeah, and then Shawmut,
Yeah.
and of course up to Wyman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did you say about when the logs got down here to the dam? Did they just flow over the dam?
Well, you see
or
that
what?
cement? Yeah, see that cement just down beyond there?
Apron just beyond.
That was
I have to
the-
get up
the-
here, I
You
think.
mean
to see
it looks like a ramp?
Yeah.
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 That's what it
okay.
was. The gate was there, and so the wood that was built to facilitate the wood going down.
The dam was reconfigured in 1990, I think, when they put these bladders in, and they took out the sluiceway, at least the upper part of it here.
So this connected to that over
And
there?
there was something probably about 12, 15 feet wide that had an electric gate on it, and they controlled it from the powerhouse over there.
Oh,
I
okay.
wish I had a picture of the gate, but
Yeah.
that's more or less what it
We got
looked
a
like.
question over
Just
here.
add one little minor footnote. We know there's a problem with getting the wood all the way down to Winslow or Augusta was really a challenge. And one of the headache points was at the mouth of the Sandy River, because sometimes you'd get a lot of rainfall upstream on the Kennebec, and the Kennebec would be in flood stage, and the Sandy River wouldn't. And there's about 2 miles near the mouth of the Sandy River, there's flat water, navigable, and this pulp that was going down the Kennebec would be driven up the Sandy River, and you'd have
And stay there.
it would stay there. And they had at one point in time placed some booms there at the mouth of the Sandy River to try to discourage that sort of thing. And so there was all kinds of possible headaches as you drove this wood another 30, 40 miles south or 20 miles south. But
So-
I know this mouth of the Sandy was a problem. If the Kennebec was high and the Sandy drainage wasn't getting the rain that was coming down from up north here, and so I know that would, because my father got involved with some of that.
So there was this.
Clogging up, because it would screw up his wood coming down.
You're going right out.
My recollection is that there was as much as 350,000 cord of wood that came down through here. Scott Paper was getting just about all their wood off their land. So they had over 1 million acres up around Moosehead. I'm sure they were buying some from local landowners, local wood cutters. So that gives you an idea about how these rivers were absolutely full. To the degree the U.S. attorney at the time, Peter Mills, who was the father of Janet Mills, our governor, was actually the lead attorney for the U.S. government at the time, and sued the Kennebec log drivers to stop these drives because there was so much bark was peeling off the wood, and etc., and it was creating a bio-oxygen demand and all the sorts of things. And that's what stopped the drives in 1976.
I think the biggest drive was like 475,000 cod, and that was like in the 70s, sometime in the 70s.
Yeah. Well, when we were up on the lake, and I drove on Roach Pond, Roach River, Lazy Tom Bog, and then into the Moosehead. We dragged it across the Moosehead, sluiced it down East Outlet, and then we'd rear all that down to Indian Pond where you guys took over.
That's where we took over from Indian Pond.
And what they had is a cutoff boom at Indian Pond. They had a boat that would come up, dragging probably a mile-long boom or something, make a circle out of it, fill that boom, cut it with wood coming out of the East Outlet, cut it off again, drag that wood would be, how much was in one of your booms?
4 or 5,000 cod in a big raft.
Yeah, 4,000 or 5,000 cod, put it down, dump it, sluice it through the dam down there, went down through the gorge, down all the way down to Wyman Lake. We had another cutoff boom. Again, they'd fill these teardrop-shaped booms, probably a mile-long boom. Another 5 your booms are bigger there, I think, weren't they? Your rafts?
Yeah, that's about what they were, 4,000.
4,000 or 5,000.
Of course, there's tugboats, see, at Indian Pond, and another tugboat at Wyman. Of course, they used the Katahdin up at Moosehead to tow them.
Yeah, we worked off the Katahdin. So it was really quite a process. I mean, there was just a huge amount of logistics. Bob Viles up in North Anson was the master driver for a lot of years and coordinated all this. I'm not sure who was your local boss.
Buster Violet.
Buster Violet?
He was the river boss. That's who I worked for.
Yeah.
He was from Skowhegan, hell of a good guy.
Yeah.
I always tell this story. The first day I went to work on the drive, I think 1966 in June, and we were down by the old Abenaki mill, the lower mill.
Lower mill?
There was a big bark pile down below it where they pile it. So that first day, on the ledges across from that, we crawled down over this. I didn't know nothing about the river drive, but so I'm with these 4 or 5, 6 guys. We parked the truck up above that bark pile, and we crawled down over that friggin' bank, and they had a boat tied up down there. And we went across the river, and there was probably 100, 150 cod of wood piled up on them ledges in high water.
Yeah.
So that's what we did all day. That first week, that's all we did was throw pulp from that big pile of wood that was jammed in the ledges back into the river.
Yeah.
And I remember the first day, at the end of the day, I was totally exhausted, right? So we had to crawl back up over that bark pile to get back to the truck. I could just barely move. There was this old guy from Fayeye, up around Fayeye Pond, him, and Ernest Creamer.
Ernest Creamer? Oh yeah, the Creamer brothers.
2 bright gold teeth in the middle of his chest. Now I was trying to get up over the bank, and he reached down and grabbed me, pulled me up the last couple of steps. He said, "There, young fellow," he says, "you'll eat your beans and Johnny cake tonight, won't you?" It was quite an experience.
The drives on the smaller tributaries like the Sandy and the Carabasset and stuff ended before the main drives on the Kennebec ended. Better roads and better trucks were 2 of the key factors. But up in the unroaded northern unorganized territory. Those drives was still the way to move wood until the 1970s.
Yeah. So, so you don't know very much about the use of these other. Did you guys? Now you had some booms around Western Island up there.
Yeah.
What'd you guys do in terms of all these booms? You have miles and miles of these booms sticking out in the river. Did you take them in or store them
In the
somewhere?
wintertime, they were all attached to the piers with chains, and we would cut them loose in the fall. And a lot of times, like here, cut them loose and then just push them with the boat over the shore and wrap a cable around a tree and attach them to the booms, just so that when the ice came in the wintertime, it wouldn't stave them all to hell.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
had extensive, all the way, really. Not so much above here because the water was quick, so you didn't need as many booms. But here, Skowhegan, Shawmut, Winslow, extensive booms,
And actually booms all the way down below
all the way down to Browns Island.
Browns Island. And so you must have had, what, 20, 30 miles of these booms?
Oh, probably, yeah.
And then you got the booms that are being used to tug. One of the things that those of us who've been around here for a while remember that they had the winter boom up above Moscow. There's a picnic area there now, a little historic takeout.
Called it the cutoff, yeah.
The cutoff, and they'd shut that off sometime in the fall, and it would just fill with wood.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many. I mean, so once the ice melted in the spring, that was what you guys started off with, and you started off what, in early May, late April?
Yeah, we'd start the first week in April. As soon as the ice went out, we would start down at the southern part, because obviously the ice melted quicker there. Down at Browns Island, you can still see the piers down there, down below Hollowell.
Yeah.
We would hang the boom. We'd take these booms that have been pushed to shore for the winter. We'd bring them back out, attach them to the piers, and then we would move upriver. We'd start down there. We go up to Augusta.
Yeah.
Do the same thing there around the dams, and then come up to Waterville and Winslow, and we would finish up hanging the boom. We used to call them hanging the booms, hanging them onto these piers. Around the 1st of June, they'd start sluicing. Maybe the middle of May,
Really? Yeah.
they'd start sluicing.
Yeah.
And
So you get your tugboats out on the lakes, and then you start pulling these rafts of wood, 4,000 or 5,000 cords at a time. How long did it take to pull a raft down Wyman Lake, for instance?
it was about a day, I think.
So every day they were pulling 5,000 cord down,
Yeah.
day by day,
Yeah.
7 days a week.
Yeah. They had 2 tugs up there. One was a big squaw and a little squaw. I don't remember what they call the one up to Indian Pond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know how the actual piers, were they made on the ice and then some?
Yeah, they were. I never actually built a pier from scratch. That's what they would do, I understand. But I did work topping. We call topping the piers. Like the ice would eventually erode them. You can see, like that's one of the piers right there.
Yeah.
And the ice would erode them, so every few years, 15 to 20 years, we'd have to rebuild them. So all they were logs, hemlock. Usually they used hemlock, it was cheap, cheapest. We'd saddle notch them. You can see, you can't really see it very good, but we'd set them in there and drill and pin them. They call them rift pins. And because they had you can see the slant on the front. These were oak planks. So after we got those, and you have to fill them with rocks. During the wintertime, usually,
They sink.
in the wintertime, we could drive out on the ice and haul these rocks out and fill them. But if we did it in the summertime, we would make these crude rafts bring out the rocks and these oak planks.
So they're not anchored on the bottom at all.
They're just sitting on it.
Sitting there.
There's a lot of weight there.
Yep.
So how did you rebuild them though? Did you just repair them from the top and they
Yeah,
just
we
kept sinking?
right at, you know, like the water level would be right about the top of that pier. So we just start there and, like I said, lay these hemlock logs in, notch them, pin them, and then fill them with rock.
So you just kept building up.
Kept
Well,
building up.
But the ice would have like taken out maybe the top 2 tiers after they, you know. So then they have to.
Okay.
Then they have to like rebuild them up.
I remember Buster. Buster, he was a good guy, but you're in a boat, right? Standing in a boat, attaching these oak planks. You drill them, then you take these pins with sledgehammers and drive these pins in to hold these oak planks in. And he'd get pissed off at us because we would break the sledgehammer handle. That's the only time I really saw him get very mad. Because, you know, swinging a goddamn sledgehammer against this pin, we'd miss and it would break the handles. That really pissed him off. He didn't like that at all. He said, Jesus Christ, can't you guys swing a goddamn sledgehammer?
Yeah, I worked one summer over at Boardman's Sawmill in Cornville.
Yeah.
And we were sawing some of those planks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was?
Working in the pit, that was a day's work. 2 of us to lug one of those planks off that saw.
Yeah,
So
they're
Dave,
I think
heavy.
they were
Those
three-
oak planks heavy as a bastard.
I think they were 3x10s, if I remember right.
Yeah, they probably were.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
really.
so Dave, what was the reason that you had the cant on those? That slant, was that something you then derived just out of habit, or was it something that actually had some?
Well, because of the ice,
So the idea is the ice kind of came up against it, kind of
it
pushed.
would deflect the ice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm supposing that the weight of the ice would kind of like help push the pier down, and not cause it to just shear off.
Yeah, the oak was to deflect the ice.
Yeah.
One winter down at Shawmut, you probably can still see some of those piers out in the river there. I think we topped like 15 piers one winter, all on the ice. Probably about 1968, and we worked, I don't know, all the month of February and part of March, topping those piers.
So you're out there in March on the ice.
Yeah,
That's pretty.
January, February, March.
That'd be pretty risky, I think, especially down there near Tidewater. You're getting brackish water a little bit.
Yeah, of course the ice was solid. We wouldn't have been out on it with trucks and
Yeah.
at that time.
So when you started the drive, I take it you were even in mid-April or whatever, ice out. You were starting to get into the water.
Oh yeah, yeah. She was cold. Yeah.
That was a long, cold day, standing in the water.
We used chopper's mittens for handling those booms when the weather was really cold.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So Dave, I have a question for you. While you did anybody get seriously hurt or die while you worked?
Yeah,
How common was that?
not real common, but
Yeah.
Life had been went through the sluice up to Wyman in the early '60s. You know where the sluice gate is up there to Wyman. It's quite a steep,
Oh yeah, it's a big dam.
long one, and I think he had a heart attack. Daryl Frank was working with him.
Yeah.
Said he thought he had a heart attack, and he went into the water and went down through the sluice. And Daryl, it's only this wide, that cement on each side of that sluice gate. Daryl ran all the way down that side of that sluice gate to try to see if he could help him. There's nothing he could do. He was dead.
Yeah.
And the other guy was up to Dead River. Pretty good friend of mine, Romeo St. John, was a foreman up on Dead River. That was a different, they had to use bateaus up there. We didn't use them here except up on the East Branch from Indian Pond to the fall. But it was a young fellow that panicked, and he tried to swim to shore, and he ended up getting drowned. I think he was a Rollins. But other than that, those are the only two. Well, yeah, In the spring of 1970, December 1973, it had been cold, but then it warmed up, and it rained for a couple of days. Amy Gallant was working for CMP, so with all that rain, they had to raise the gates, and it was at night, and it had been warm, and then all of a sudden it turned cold. I wrote a song about it. I don't know if I'll get to play it, but
Hope so.
he slipped off that dam in Skowhegan, and he drowned. Yeah.
Huh.
So they put up safety railings after that.
Yeah.
But when at that time there was nothing there.
Huh.
By the hour. We worked a lot of hours. We didn't get paid much, but we worked like 66 hours a week.
That included your food and your camp?
Yeah, a noon meal.
So they never gave you like breakfast and three, four meals like the old logging camps.
Not me, because I worked for Buster.
Yeah.
And Buster, we tried to make sure we got home at night.
Oh, I see.
But sometimes we had to stay in the camps, and they fed all 3 meals in the camps.
Yeah.
But on the rear, it was noon meal.
Yeah.
Hey Ernie, how about we move back to the parking lot so we can all hear better and
Good idea.
stand in the road?
Yeah. Yeah.
Really looking at
That might be good. Rigging. Sometimes they had toggles on each end.
Then we had raft chains. They were long, much 10, 12 feet long, and that they'd use to attach the boom logs together.
So now there would be 2 of these strings of logs chained together. You have, because the ends of the logs, or middles or whatever, the logs are bent or whatever, and so you had to have 2 of them side by side. So when we talk about these mile-long strings of booms that are being used to raft this wood 5,000 cords at a time, you actually had, if the whole boom was a mile long, it might be 2 miles of these logs, all chained together.
Yeah.
Hundreds
Yeah.
of boom logs being used. And some might be older, so they weren't floating as high as they would or whatever. And so the idea was, once you had, if you had 2 of them together, side by side, one set would kind of offset the gaps or whatever other issues there might be with the other boom.
There's enormous labor, enormous amounts of labor. They'd have logs, they'd drop these logs off on the side of the river, piles of them, I mean high. So the guys with can dogs roll them down into the river and then build these booms and attach them together with chains.
Yeah.
It was an enormous amount of work.
How did they unhook them?
Well, you had to get the situation where it was you pulled on both sides. If it's just slack water, just floating,
Yeah.
it's pretty easy.
Yeah,
But if you had you'd have to simultaneously have, say this was coming up through, you had a piece of wood in there.
oh, that would be easier. Yeah.
Well, then you had to, it was driven in there and
Yeah.
pulled in there by the chain.
But I'm thinking of unhooking it, if it were looped through that ring, that would be hard.
We take a can dog, right? We tie a rope in the dog, in the hook end, and then drive the coin in, and you could use it as a lever and pull the logs together in order to either tighten it up to either take one out or
And you're standing on the boom while you're doing this, or you're
in
standing
the
on
boat,
a boat?
usually in the boat.
Yeah, but you might be standing in the boom, might be guys in the water,
Yeah.
might be, sometimes you could struggle for an hour. If you had tension on there, it'd be a long time. Just trying to figure out, getting more and more boats, pulling on it from different angles. You had boom jumper boats, usually a wooden boat with a 20-horse engine on it, that could just kind of jump right over the boom, just go right over it, get inside, pulling on it from that direction. I know up on the lake we were doing that all the time.
And we used come-alongs.
Yeah.
Heavy-duty come-alongs. To pull it.
David, did your father do this too?
Yeah,
Do
he
I
did,
understand?
yeah.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's in the family kind of.
DNA.
How many of those
Actually,
do
my-
you have on a use on a boom?
Well, there'd be, the boom logs were 25 feet long or so, and you'd have one of these between every joint. So if you had a mile of boom chained together, divide by 25,000, you're talking about 200 logs. Then you had to have another set inside, so you had another 400 logs and 400 chains just to raft that 5,000 cords of wood down, and then go back up and get another 5,000 cords. And the same thing with, there's just these miles. We talked about 30, 40 miles of these booms scattered up and down the river. And in some occasions the logs, they were usually what, spruce, I guess, or
Yeah.
and they'd start to sink, and so they would have to replace them. So you're always drilling new holes, making new boom logs. It was all part of the maintenance.
One of the interesting things about cutting a chain, oftentimes we need to cut a chain. So we you had what was called a sharp axe and a dull axe. Take the dull axe and set this down onto put the axe here and set this down onto the joint. Then take the sharp axe, and take the head and just keep driving it and driving it and driving it. And it would, because this is like, it's crude iron. So it was fairly easy to cut.
Did they have supplies of these then on
Oh
shore?
yeah,
That they
piles and piles of it, yeah.
When the drive stopped, there was just, they pulled all this iron and just,
Yeah.
I know I heard about an occasion up in
still.
Great Northern, there was like, I don't know, tons of chains just kind of heaped together. It wasn't even worth the bother to haul them down to a scrapyard. It was just,
Probably still there.
Ernie, speaking of Great Northern, they shut down in '65. The reason they closed down driving was money. They lose 10% of their wood in a river drive.
yeah.
And like he said, they're so expensive. The labor was so intensive. Plus, all the wood came at once, and by going to trucking, it really, because one of the things that happened the first year they trucked, the mill ran out of wood. And so after that, that's why, remember Great Northern had those huge piles of logs up along the Golden Road?
Oh, yeah.
That's why, because the first year after the river drive, they ran out of wood. So to prevent that, they started stockpiling so much wood. And finally, somebody said, you're hurting the quality of your paper by using this old wood that's been sitting there for so long. So they finally smartened up at the end and weren't stockpiling so much.
Yeah.
The reason was the cost. They lost so much wood.
Well, it took them a while to build the Golden Road, by
Yeah.
which they could, that was being constructed, say from what, 68 until 72, 73 or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And that was, any of you know what the Golden Road? Probably a lot of you may, some of you may not, but it's a huge piece of infrastructure that must go, I don't know, 85 miles?
100 miles.
100 miles.
Right to the Canadian border.
Millinocket to the Canadian border. And and because it's a private road, they've got trucks on there. Your typical truck you see going by here has got maybe 20, 25 ton on it. They'll have, I don't know,
150, yeah.
yeah, whatever.
Yeah. One time they were hauling three trail loads at a time. They were,
Yeah,
Bouchard was hauling 3 at a time.
yeah.
One of the problems towards the end of the drive was always looking ways cut costs. So they were driving green, traditionally they would rick this wood up on the bank and let it dry a little bit so that it would float. But at the end they were dumping it right in green. And so some of it would sink, and that was one of the environmental concerns.
Yeah, yeah. Plus all the bark.
Yeah.
bark
Well, one question I had when you said, and anyway, what environmental cause did it have on, like, when the rivers were just, the whole top is just covered in logs? What did that do to the fish population?
I actually don't know. Some people say it enhanced the fish population because they had shelter and kept the water cooler. Others say that there was just all the BOD, biochemical oxygen demand, was increased such that it took oxygen out of the water and the fish couldn't live there. So I really, I think it depends on how much agitation there was in the water and how much oxygen it had in it. I really don't
Yeah.
know.
Never mind the effect that the dams had.
I will say that if you look up and down the river, we just did a river trip yesterday from Madison down to Skowhegan. If you look at the riverbanks, they are largely, there aren't very many houses on them. And if you look further up, you see very few houses. You can, paddling these rivers is not all that far removed from the way it was when Benedict Island came up through. I mean, the forest types might be different, and but you can't even necessarily even see the cornfields. You go in some other states, and the fact that the rivers were taken up by all this pulp, nobody wanted to live on the rivers. Nobody. It's essentially worthless. You go in many other states where there was not a drive, and you'll see house after house after house after house after house along.
I remember you saying that before, actually.
So it's in some ways it had a major beneficial impact. I mean, it certainly has changed the complexion of the main landscape way beyond what it otherwise would have been, I would say, for good or bad.
Talk about a couple of things, the environmental impact. Once we stopped the river drives, all the wood was moved by truck, which meant better roads. So we have this very dense road network up in our unorganized forested areas of the state. And when I was growing up, to get to some of these remote ponds, you either had to hike in or get flown in. Now you can drive to those places with your family sedan, grandma, and all the pets. So it really opened up this North Woods to public access. And that's changed the whole character of Maine's North Woods from essentially a wilderness to maybe something closer to a working woodlot. And secondly, I don't know how much diesel is used up in trucking wood to the mills, but that's certainly an environmental impact that didn't exist when we were driving it down the rivers. So we improved one piece of our environmental fabric and present challenges to other dimensions of our environmental fabric. And almost nothing is free. The bottom line is.
One of the things I should point out, we were looking at all these piers out here. This dam did not exist until at least 1890. Like I said, the KLD was formed in 1835. We're standing on an island right here. They talk about this waterway being a canal. It was actually a part of the river originally, before these mills were built. And so keep in mind that most of these piers that you saw out here were built at a very early time for the purpose of serving an abundance of sawmills all in around through here. So it just, sometimes you look at these fixtures such as this dam and think, oh, that has been a permanent fixture for all time, and it has not been. It wasn't until, I've actually got a copy of the 1883 Colby Atlas of Madison and Anson, which only depicts this dam as being a straight line across the river as a projection of what it would have been when it was actually came to be built. I had a photo at home of this section of the river before the dam was in. I didn't happen to be able to find it, but to come today. But
when was the dam in Skowhegan built?
I
Fairly
don't
recent
know.
history, right?
Well,
A whole series of dams.
yeah. The ones that are there now, probably in the 20s, maybe. I'm guessing. I don't know.
Because you see old pictures and it's a falls through town.
Did they drive wood down to Gardner and Brunswick too from here? Because Gardner had a mill there, and
The long logs, back when they did long
the
logs.
saw logs of it, the Gardner paper mill there, they must have
As
had
far as
wood.
pulp
come in.
and, as far as I know, Augusta was
The last
the
one, yeah,
last stop. The long logs went all the way down to,
sure.
all the way.
yeah, all the way to the ocean, I think.
And the sorting of the wood was a hell of a undertaking too. A lot of these piers that you see out in the river, that was another purpose of it. You have this section of booms, and then you'd have to make sure that certain logs or certain pulp went in one direction and the other went off into that mill at that point.
So this canal here served the paper mill here.
Yeah.
So
When
that was
they- when
cut
they-
off, that was separated out before it ever got that way.
Yes. Eventually, this
When
became
did
a,
they
this
lose
became a
the
canal
drought?
for
When did they have
purposes
flooded?
specifically for
Everything
that
went out
for
to
this
the
mill.
ocean.
For that mill.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what year that was. I know one year they had such a storm that it washed the trash right out of the river. I don't know, was it Penobscot or was it here? One of them, but I know one year they lost all the wood.
It happened several times on the Kennebec.
Did it? Yeah. That wasn't good.
I've got a
Show this big
copy
straight
of
line of
the.
dam.
This is
That's
an old
because the
photo
dam
that's
hadn't been built then. So this is
seen
just a protection.
hanging around in a number of different
In fact, the dam
locations
has got
for
2 or 3 different lengths.
life, and it shows skaters
Pieces here,
on the
here, and
Kennebec
then like this.
between the trestle and here. And it's taken from Anson. And I always thought that was a photo of the skaters, which I guess it wasn't.